Um, the thing is, I had grown up, helping out my neighbor on his farm, an old man on his farm. So I always like to be out, getting my hands dirty, and I mean, coming back and looking at the landscape and seeing what I could actually plug into. Um, it was a no-brainer for me to go into agriculture, really, because I mean, food security is actually something that I'm interested in and passionate about. So coming back, agriculture was like
So it wasn't
at
as
the
if
back of
some
my
of the
head.
policy looked and saw some of the policies that were quite favorable to you, but this was a personal decision. This was a
Yes,
personal effort.
yes.
Okay, let's bring in Mr. Emmanuel Ijewere from our Lagos Network Center, who is a renowned chartered accountant and chairman, Best Food Global Limited. We'd like to hear from you. Are we now seeing a revolution in the agricultural sector with, of course, regards to what happened last year?
Well, we certainly are. I think 2017 and 2016 were years of preparation, foundation laying, and so on. And this was further boosted by government policies that were very positive to creating sustainable agricultural growth in Nigeria. So those were very good years in terms of policies. 2018 will be the time for now start reaping all those. Feisayo, for example, is an example of what the future looks like for agriculture. Younger people coming in with innovation, with ideas, with courage. I think that Nigeria is now poised. As long as we continue to sustain those policies and we continue to move in that direction, the Minister of Agriculture, Federal Minister of Agriculture is very strong, very positive, have a very good leader, which is a very good thing. But the states have not been as forthcoming as they are expected to be, because agriculture is actually practiced in the states and indeed the local governments. We need to bring a lot more into it. We calculated about 7 or 8 states that are very strong in agriculture and taking it very seriously. Others are paying lip service. But we need to bring them all aboard, because every state and every local government in Nigeria has a role to play in moving us forward. We must not renege at this stage. We have gone this far, and Nigeria has a very, very good opportunity of being sustainable in terms of food security. We are moving in that direction. We've not got there. The value chain is still very weak as at now. But one thing that I saw, like what Feisayo said, that he has gone into greenhouse farming. Greenhouse farming is technologically advanced farming. It's not just the ordinary farming we are used to. That's the future we should be going into. But that should not be the only direction to go. But he is type coming in, and in fact, between 2016 and 2017, I would say the new entrants into agriculture have never been in it before, and they seem to be bringing in great ideas that are marrying technology and agricultural progress. I am quite excited about what 2018 has in stock for us, and I look forward to 2019 and going forward. I do believe that Nigeria is poised for this, but we must not renege and start, like Dr. Kegbu said, let us not start celebrating. We have not yet gotten there, but we have all the symptoms that will lead us to positive development.
All right, still staying with you, Mr. Emmanuel Ijewere, you said now that there were some good policies by government that actually made 2017 a very good year for agriculture. I'd like you to speak to some of these policies.
All right. I would say if Isaiah, for example, had gone into greenhouse farming about 3 years ago, he would have had to pay a lot more. Government brought greenhouses into agricultural spectrum and therefore reduced the duty on it. That was a positive thing. The other one that was made was the fact that the fertilizers were made a lot more readily available last year. A lot more farmers got new improved seedling last year. That's what increased the yield that we had. So those policies that were put in place created a situation where we had an increased yield. But that has not taken us out of the woods, because we expect in 2014-15 our yield in tomato, for example, is between 4 and 8 metric tons per hectare. But last year, we were able to move to about 10, 12. But until we get to about 40 or 50, we've not gotten there. But we're in the right direction. So this, what I'm actually saying is that a lot of policies have been put in place in terms of government paying more attention, providing the inputs, creating laws that made it easier for agriculture to thrive. But we have not been able yet, although promises have been made on the logistics involved, because moving goods from one part of the country to the other is still a nightmare. And then the third one, which is preservation. Preservation has already started. We've discovered that a lot of policies have been put in place in terms of solar energy. We know that it will take us a long time for our grid to get up to the level that will help us. And most of the farmers are in remote villages. So solar energy is the most appropriate thing, and prices seem to have gone down, and more interest has been shown. Therefore, preservation going forward will become a major issue for us in Nigeria today. We are losing about 40 to 50 to 60% of the produce we have, but I believe by 2018, 2019, that loss itself will reduce.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel Ijewere. But let's bring in the Director, Tree Crop, Federal Ministry of Agric, who's joining us now on the program. He is Quadri Lekong. Good morning, and thank you for joining us on Good Morning Nigeria.
Good morning, viewers at home.
All right, you've been following the discussion. So far, we've been talking about the 2017 agricultural year. From your perspective, what are the factors you think contributed to a successful agricultural year that was last year?
Thank you very much. One of the things that contributed majorly to the successful operation agricultural production in 2017 were first, the ministry procured quite a lot of inputs in terms of processing equipment, in terms of supporting farmers with creating an enabling environment for farmers to have easy access to fertilizer. You will recall that sometimes ago there was this partnership agreement with Morocco government to assist us with some brands of fertilizer that were not locally available. And then with the supply of this agricultural equipment, for example, it actually assisted farmers, including agrochemicals. Because if you are producing, and you know, the era of using hoes and cutlasses to farm has actually gone forever. So now that is the only way youth can be encouraged with the use of agrochemicals. So last year, the Ministry of Agriculture actually helped farmers a lot across the 36 states of the Federation with agrochemicals. Same thing with micro agro equipment such as threshers and the rest of them, so that people don't need to use manual means of threshing maize or threshing soybeans and all the rest of them. So there were quite a lot of things that government did last year to actually enable our farmers to succeed in agricultural production. Also last year we heard for the first time we actually engaged stakeholders in certain meetings. For example, you will recall that United Nations has banned the use of polypropylene bags in the packaging of agricultural commodities. So we have engaged stakeholders to bring this to their attention. Otherwise, the plan of government or the country to actually export produce might be just a mirage if this particular issue is not properly addressed. So last year, we were able to encourage farmers to begin to use kenaf as a packaging material in the packaging of their agricultural produce. These are some of the things that the federal government did last year to actually assist farmers. And also, don't forget also that there is intensification in the area of production of off-season crops, e.g. rice, for example, because you find out that rice can be produced 2-3 times in a year. So last year, government still assisted farmers to ensure that crops are actually, irrigated rice were produced so as to augment that of the ones that we produce during the rainy season. And some of the things you are seeing in my front, for example, those were the things that we actually engaged stakeholders last year. For example, this is the sack that must be used in the packaging of cashew, cocoa, and not the rest of them. This is what they must use now. They must no longer use polypropylene bags. Even the time will come in this nation that even the packaging of livestock feeds, for example, will no longer be in polypropylene bags. And of course, even the cleaning of Ogoni land, for example, you can use the inner core of this particular crop to do the cleaning, because if it is grinded and you pour it on an oily substance, it will absorb it quickly, and immediately you take it off, you can still get your oil back. So these are some of the things that government has brought to the attention of our farmers last year.
All right, Mr. Kadri Lekon, thank you for your opening remarks. We're still looking at what was achieved in the agri sector in 2017. Before we now look at project for 2018, Dr. Kongu, let us look at, we've talked about, yes, good policies, you know. We've also talked about, you know, growth in some of the other, you know, subsectors of agri. But let us look at the broad spectrum from rice production, wheat production. We know what is happening in the wheat production. Should we make comparative, you know, growth or progress in almost all areas?
Well, you see, there are very important components you must put into your addition. Let's talk about technology. I'm very excited at our young brother, and he's a very good example. Our big brother has said, oh, government had brought in a policy that allowed him to bring in his greenhouses. But he's going to bring in that greenhouse at the exchange rate of what the dollar is selling against the naira. If I had, government has put in a program where we are able to also now link in whatever materials that are being used in making those greenhouses, and then we are localizing the production. And then people like Lekon, all they need to do is to tie their certificates, or 1, 2, 3 of them, you know, to that project, and there's an off-taker, and this is critical. So what is very important, and that's why I'm saying, let's not dwell so much on the policies. We've never had any issues of policies in Nigeria. What we've had is the issues of now managing relationships. Each time we talk about technology, nobody brings in the Ministry of Science and Technology. And what will shock you is that a lot of the research centers that support agriculture are actually under the Ministry of Science and Technology. The NABDA, which is the National Biotechnology Development Agency, is under Ministry of Science and Technology. NASENI is under Ministry of Science and Technology. The food place where you have the only gamma irradiation machine in the country is under Ministry of Science and Technology. And you go to Raw Materials Research Development Council, you'll be shocked at the amount of equipment that they have been able to produce that can support agriculture. However, it's important we know that it is not the front end that matters. Your total cost is determined and dependent on the inputs on your machinery. There are small tractors called Mahindra that come from India. You know, to make it easy for you to buy it at 4 million or 5 million, you know, they bring what you call the 4-stroke or the 4-cylinder Mahindras. So the point I'm trying to make, and it's important to get it clear, is that in the first P, we must be able to support it with the next 2 Ps. Because I have a son like him too, who is also in this greenhouse thing, and he says to me, if I knew it was going to be this way, I wouldn't have gotten into it. Because you find out that by the time Fisher starts, you know, running out his numbers, if he's not getting this money from his father, he's definitely not getting it from the bank. And you might find out that the young man is now probably now struggling, you know, to stay with a passion and not with profit, because there's no guaranteed market for what Fisher is producing. I'll stand to be corrected this year. So he's struggling with people. He's producing at very high energy cost, because when you run a greenhouse, you're going to be running that greenhouse. If it's using drip technology, you must run it on energy. He probably does not have, you know, NEPA. He's using either one Apache or something. So the point I'm trying to make is that, yes, we've been able to develop very good policies of agriculture, but can we not tie it? And my brother, the director, has shown a bag all our grandfathers used in the days of the marketing boards. The same bag he's showing now. Okay, he talked about KENAF. Is there any commercial program to plant this kenaf? Is there any program to link, commercialize the production of kenaf? Is there any policy that now allows those who are going to enter into kenaf production or bag production to be able to get some kind of equity funding and not necessarily debts that now ties your business to a loan repayment schedule if you succeed or not? So these are the cross-cutting issues that are important we understand before you now start making your projections towards 2018.
Yes, you know, Dr. Kongo, you've talked about the technology, which
Yes.
we know is a big factor,
Yes.
you know, and we're going to take Feisayo on that precisely,
Yes.
since, you know, he's one of the younger ones that are bringing this in, and of course, what encouragement he's gotten from. But I'd like you to speak to the, you know, growth that we've recorded in different value chains. Let's look at rice production. We've really had quite, you know, growth in that area. Let's look at wheat production. Let's look at tomatoes that Mr. Ijawara said. What were those factors, enabling factors for growth?
I try, as I get older, to get very, very optimistic. I try to get very careful the kind of things I say on national television, because, I mean, it would be very unfair for you to come on national TV and say, oh, nothing has happened in that sector. But you see, sometimes the fact that face the figures bring some kind of confusion. If we have done so well in rice production and we've been able to say that in 2018 we are actually going to stop exporting rice, has it made locally produced rice cheaper than the imported ones? You know why? Because everything that goes into that production of that rice is imported, from machinery to pesticides to insecticides to packaging to storage. So it's important you know where your cost, what you call your hidden costs, are coming from. So it is not enough to say we did 300,000 metric tons of wheat, 300,000 metric tons of this, and then by the end of the day, you're not able to sell. In fact, if you allowed the foreign rice to come in, they sell almost 20% or 40% cheaper than what it is you're selling, after transportation, after storage, after tax, after inland movement and all that. It is because this very critical aspect of it, which is technology, we are overlooking it, Claire. And again, it's also important that you look at all these countries that bring in these things. There is some certain element of subsidies. My big brother Ijawari has 350 hectares of land. I'd like to know what offers, you know, subsidies our government has given him to say, okay, go ahead and plant these things. When you lose, okay, government is able to take X amount of your losses to make certain you're in business. I like to see my young fisher also say to me, oh, you know what, I have an insurance policy with NAIC, which is very critical in this, and they've said to me, go ahead, you know, when you lose whatever it is, we're able to cover up these insurance losses. So in developing an agricultural program for Nigeria, my sisters, I'm saying to you that while we talk agriculture, okay, we must talk market. While we talk market, we must talk production. While we talk production, we must talk packaging, and then sources.
Okay.
All right, Mr. Kengo, Dr. Kengo, we'll get back to you shortly. But then I want to take up the issue that you have raised with Feisayo. Feisayo, you are into greenhouse farming. I'd like you to give us some more insight into it. Of course, let us know the challenges and, of course, areas or what has encouraged you to actually continue.
Well, this last 6 months was my first season, actually, in greenhouse farming. Greenhouse farming basically is a system where you can farm all year round, right? So you're in a controlled environment. If you're growing, for example, tomatoes, there are less pests. We use drip irrigation system, so the water goes straight into the roots. It's good. It produces healthy products. Challenges I faced when I was starting up was, one, funding. I approached a government parastate offer for funding for the structures, right? And I was told point blank that I can't get funding for structures. And I thought, well, these structures are actually what I need to go into this business. But if you had asked me this question about challenges a few weeks ago, I would have definitely said yes, funding, funding, funding. But when you think about it, you can go to family, friends. There are so many business plan competitions open now. Tony Elumelu Foundation,
Yeah.
the grants as well. I mean, if you apply to that and your business plan is top notch, you get money
Do
from
you
that.
see a prospect for, greenhouse agriculture in Nigeria from, with your experience so far?
I do actually, because for example, if you go to ShopRite, some of the tomatoes that are imported sell for over 1,000 naira, and they're imported, and I produce the same tomatoes and I sell to my off takers for a lot lower than that. I'll just say that, a lot lower than that. So I mean, the more people that come into the business, I mean, I have high hopes for greenhouse farming, anyways.
What kind of environment, what kind of incentives do you think, people who wish to, undertake a greenhouse agriculture might, get from, government and other managers?
Um, I think for greenhouse farming, funding is an integral part of it. If, like the doctor said, foreign exchange hasn't actually helped us in this business. So when you do the numbers, at the end of the day, you're struggling, really struggling to break even or make a profit. But if we can get the funding part right, then I see a lot more youths going into it. I have friends also who are doing greenhouse farming in the south, in Lagos and stuff, and they have more than the number of greenhouses I have, so they're able to produce more, and they're making obviously more money than I am making. So it's all in the numbers. If you have more greenhouses, you make more money,
But
and
then
that equates to, I mean, funding, capital.
But from your experience, you've done your very first farming season.
Yeah.
Would you say that you broke even or you're still struggling?
I did not break even in the first season, and that's because for me, it had to do with the workers I had. Because it's like a science, right? It's so technologically advanced that you have to get everything right. If you're meant to irrigate at 8 a.m. in the morning, you have to irrigate at 8 a.m. in the morning. You can't come the next day and say, I'm going to irrigate at 10 a.m. in the morning. Like, it affects the system. You can't give the plants more water than they need. You can't give the plants more fertilizer than they need. So I mean, those are some of the challenges we experienced in the first season, where we were maybe over irrigating or putting too much fertilizers that were detrimental to some of the plants. So, but I'm hopeful. I mean, it's just the first season, and we've learned from the mistakes we've made. We've brought on an agronomist who actually knows the science of everything, and we're hopeful for the next season. I mean, we're very hopeful for the next season.
All right, let's quickly bring in Mr. Ijewere, of course, who is into crop production. And there was a projection by FAO which indicates that there might be a weakening agricultural markets, of course, in the next 10 years. And that projection is between 2017 to 2026. But he has said, look, with regards to crop production, of course, which you are involved in, you might need a lot of, increased yields. So what can be done, to attain a 2018 target for the country?
I think these statements made by Dr. Emeka were very, very germane and very, very, very good statements, and it shows his understanding of what is happening. But for Feisayo, I think the greenhouse, saying that he went to greenhouse because he could not afford the money for the land, greenhouses are by far more expensive than cost of land. I am already in greenhouse, been in greenhouses now for about a year and a half, and I intend by the end of 2018 I should have about 100 greenhouses. And the market itself is bigger than even 5,000 greenhouses in Nigeria. The principle of increasing your production comes from the amount of science that goes into it. Agriculture today is not what it used to be. It used to be 90% agriculture and 5% science. Today, it's 98% science and only 2% energy. So, and that's why what we need to start looking at is the scientific part. That's why I was excited about Dr. Emeka's position as bringing in the Ministry of Technology and marrying them with the Ministry of Agriculture, working together to achieve that goal, working with the Ministry of Water Resources. All of these need to come together for us to improve on our yield. We have very good land, but we are one of the lowest yielding countries in the world in terms of agriculture. That is being addressed right now, but it can be further accelerated if we bring coordination between all the various ministries, see them all as assets for agriculture. So these are things that the federal government needs to do at its own level. We also are glad that people who were never involved in agriculture are now coming in. So you're having retired judges, retired professors, in fact, practicing doctors, lawyers, and so on coming in with the knowledge they've gotten from their various professions, but adding to it the agricultural street sense to move it forward. So the quality of people coming to agriculture today to complement our forefathers who have done so well, our uncles and so on, who still remain about 90% of those producing food for us, is a very good and welcome development. However, the young ones must come in learning from what mistakes have been made by the older ones. Do not come in and disappoint yourself, because there's enough information today to ensure that you don't make mistakes that those who were there before you made. So the young man, Feisayo, is a very courageous young man, and I think he has a great future. And people like him need to learn from what the mistakes the others have made. So don't get discouraged and become a negative example to other people. There's a lot of money to be made in agriculture, and you only go into it not from sentiments and not because you're looking for a hobby. You go into it because you want to make money. It's a serious, very serious business. Anybody that goes into agriculture should see it as such. And we believe more and more people are coming in, and the next batch of millionaires in the next 5-10 years will come from the agricultural sector. The entire value chain. Agriculture is not just farming anymore. Farming is only a part of the value chain. There are so many things to be done, like were stated by the other speakers. Thank you.
Just before, sorry, Rhoda, just before we bring in Mr. Lekon, who is the Director of Tree Crops of the Federal Ministry of Agric. Mr. Jawara, we talked about, Agric now being, more scientific, now. Fortunately, our agricultural practice is mostly traditional. We've been talking about mechanized farming. Dr. Kwengu just referred to, the materials that Mr. Lekon displayed as those used by his great-grandfathers. So what or how can mechanized farming add value, to the sector in 2018?
For you to understand that is to know that 70% of the hard work in agriculture is land preparation. What's happened in the past, our uncles who were in agriculture all these years spent most of their energy, 70% of their energy on land preparation. What mechanized farming means is that you use equipments to do this. Rather than just going for 1 acre, the fact that you're having an equipment, you can go for 10 hectares. That is basically what it's about. So the idea of mechanized farming, the machines will not determine for you what kind of seed you plant. That's a scientific thing you need to analyze to determine what kind of seed you put in the ground. So there's a misunderstanding about mechanized farming. If you were to buy a tractor, you will discover that your tractor will work for only about 2 or 3 months in the year, while you are there all year round, because the mechanization does not really determine the actual result that comes from it, but reduces the amount of work that goes into it, wasted energy. That is what it is. So mechanized farming is about land preparation specifically, and then you now have some machines that do plantings. That too, you use it for less than 2 weeks in the year, and for the rest of the year, it's doing nothing. So mechanized farming should not be on the basis of anybody buying his own equipment. If you have less than 250 hectare land, do not buy a tractor. It's a waste of money. It's economically unwise for you to even own a tractor. You hire a tractor to do the work for you in 3 weeks or 1 month, and that's it. It goes away. For the rest of the year, you continue with your farm. So there has to be a better understanding and knowledge about mechanized farming. It's a big word, but it's a very simple word. Just prepare the land, help you do those things that human beings do and use so much energy. That's why I said agriculture is now moving away from energy and going into science.
Thank you very much, Mr. Emmanuel Lijere. We'll get back to you, especially on the issue of export. But then let's bring in Mr. Kadri Lekan. The Ministry of Agric is actually working, especially this year, to roll out some plans to improve the agricultural industry. I'd like to know from you what those plans are.
Thank you very much. For a point of correction, my designation actually is a Director of Plantation Program. There is a program that the Ministry of Agriculture is embarking upon this year, for example, in the area of plantation agriculture. The issue of greenhouses and stuff, you know, they are basically for domestic consumption. But when you talk in terms of export, especially when you talk about maybe cocoa, cashew, Benny seed, and all the rest of them, you are talking about exporting produce that you must ensure that you comply with international standards. And one of the things the ministry intends to do this year is actually to see how we can increase our production. For example, cashew. As at last season, as at last year, for example, our production was about 170,000 metric tons. And you discover that most portion of the middle belt and part of southwest and even southeast, they are very suitable for cashew production, for example. And so Nigeria can make millions of dollars from this particular value chain alone. And for cashew, you just, like I said, there's a program that is running in the ministry this year. We also call it, apart from being a plantation program, we also call it Invent Your Future. I used to tell people in my office, I said, if I had planted maybe 10 or 20 hectares of oil palm since I left the university in the 80s, for example, I don't think I would have been in the Ministry of Agriculture today. Actually, I would have been, I would have been somewhere else doing something else today. Because why? You plant this crop, and for the next 30 years, it keeps giving you produce. It keeps giving you money. The same thing with cocoa. You plant cocoa, and for the next 30 years, the thing keeps giving you money. And so when you go into retirement, you find out that that is why even the last, about 2 weeks ago, the Army Chief of Staff was in our office, and the minister was encouraging them that servicemen need to go, while they are still in service, they should find a way of investing their money in plantation agriculture so that by the time they retire, they will have something to fall back to. So these are some of the things that the ministry intends to do in 2018. Also, we intend to distribute more equipment. Like Dr. Ijewere said, mechanization is not just about land preparation. It also includes using tractor, for example, for weeding, for planting, for spraying chemicals. Also, you use machines also for threshing, and not the rest of it. So mechanization can be engaged at every stage of the value chain. So it is very, very important to note that. Then also, this year we hope to distribute more of this equipment. We also intend to make use of, to encourage state government to make use of the dams that they have just lying fallow in most parts of the country. You'll be amazed that in Oyo State, for example, they have over 23 dams across the states, and they are just lying idle. Although I'm very happy to inform you that I was in Vietnam some weeks ago with the Honorable Minister for Cashew Conference, and I read online that Oyo State government is now giving land free of charge to whoever, who would be investor in agriculture. This is a positive step. This is one of the things our state government needs to do to make land accessible to farmers, to those people, to investors that are interested in investing in agriculture. So these are some of the things I think we will be pursuing in the new year, and also to ensure that inputs, quality inputs, are easily accessible to our farmers. We are also bringing to the attention of farmers how they can comply with standards, because we discovered that to access international market, you must comply with international standard. And most times, like for example, when we were in Vietnam 2 weeks ago with the Honorable Minister, the complaint at that conference was that quality of cashew coming from Nigeria was not too good enough. And what was the reason? They said because we don't allow the cashew to dry. And the reason is because during the cashew season, it's coming up next month now. During the cashew season, a lot of people are just, you know, they are hurrying up to make sure that they sell and they make good money during that season. But then there is need for them to dry this thing because the sun is abundant, and then they can dry this thing to improve the quality. But also, I'm looking forward to a time when the marketing board also will be restored, so that farmers can have access to markets.
Okay, Mr. Leko, there are, you know, views that most of the, you know, progress that we recorded in 2017 in the agri sector were basically driven by the personal efforts of the farmers and as well as some private inputs. And the argument is that some of the promises made by government with regards, first of all, to even bringing down the price of you know, locally produced rice has still not been met. The issue, of course, of you know, providing storage facilities and all that, and so many other promises that the Ministry of Agriculture made, you know, were not met in 2017.
Well,
can you speak to those?
Thank you very much. I want you to know that agriculture is on the concurrent list. And so the federal government cannot actually shoulder all the responsibility, all the finances that is required to move our agriculture to the next level. So having said that, but that is not to say to exonerate the federal government. We are making a lot of effort. For example, last year, if you listen to the news carefully, you will discover that the CBN governor, Emefiele, met with bankers committee, and they agreed that the interest rate on agricultural lending should now be 5%. I think that is a positive. That is a positive.
There was a promise made by, you know, your ministry of assisting farmers by producing, destoning, you know, threshers and equipment. What's the state of that?
Thank you very much. Last year also, you will recall that maybe you are not aware, the ministry distributed over 100 rice mills. 100, and it was advertised, and then it was sold out to the to investors. 100 mills. This is part of government effort to assist the sector, so that we can add value to whatever we are producing. The only point, the only thing I've seen is that you see, as a country, we are still not producing enough. But unfortunately, even the little we are producing, some of them are still being wasted. That is the paradox. But then, like I said earlier on, you discover that we are supposed to be producing 2-3 times in a year by assessing, by utilizing the water resources, abundant water resources that we have in the country. If you don't do that, if you don't do intensive cultivation, and if you don't expand your acreages, you are not likely to get the desired impact. For example, the greenhouse my brother was talking about. If your production, if Dr. Jewere said the other time that output for tomatoes still in the range of 8 to 10 tons, whereas in South Africa you get about 40 metric tons per hectare. I mean, that is where we're supposed to get to. That is the only way you can bring down the cost of food prices. Also, let me also inform you that we have a program that we call Agricultural Equipment Hiring Enterprises. What we do with this program is that we assist individual farmers that are already in mechanization business, for example.
Exactly, that's the thing. What about smallholder farmers?
Yes,
because they constitute, you know, the majority of farmers that we have.
Exactly. So, like the doctor said earlier on, that you don't need to own a tractor, for example. That is why the ministry came out with this policy by saying, okay, if you are in the years past, most state government, they procure tractors that end up in the houses of commissioners and all the rest of them and big men. But these days, what happened? The ministry now came up with a policy called Agricultural Equipment Hiring Enterprises, whereby you support a private person that is already in mechanization business. You support him with 5 units of tractors. You support him also with the implements. And how do you do it? You give him part of it as grants. and then you ask him to pay the balance, maybe about, he will pay 7 million naira as deposit, then the ministry will give out of this 42 million, they will give you some part as grant, and then the rest you have to pay through banks. But unfortunately, we have exhausted this fund. So this program, we intend to get money this year so that more people can actually have access. So that as a farmer in your village, all you need to do is just go to that farmer, that mechanization service provider within your locality that has about 5 units of tractor that you can hire from. You don't need to own a tractor. If you have less than 20, 50 hectares of land, you don't need to own a tractor.
You need thank you very much, Mr. Lekon Quadri. We'll get back to you in the course of this discussion. But then just a quick one to let our viewers know that they can be a part of this discussion by tweeting at our Twitter handle at NTAGMN. Mr. Emeka, Dr. Emeka Okengo, I'd like to bring you. You've just listened to some of the plans he said that the Ministry of Agri would be rolling out, and some of them they've already, rolled out. Well, what's your take on some of these plans?
I'm a little worried. And let me take it from Vietnam. There's a product they call hibiscus, popularly known as Zobo. Nigeria is exporting hibiscus in its rawest form to Vietnam. God knows what we're getting back as a finished product. The director talked about plantation, and he talked about agriculture being on the concurrent list. What it simply means that it simply means that it has to be something that both the subnationals play at. We have gone past the days of plantation. Agriculture is actually moving into the realm of belts now. You no longer have plantations, you actually have what you call agricultural belts. And if the custodians of a land are actually the state governments and the owners of a land are the local governments, I don't see how this will not run into some stormy water of sorts. He talked about agriculture mechanization. I would have been happy if the ministry could probably tell us how much they had given as support and how much they had gotten back, from those they gave this support to, vis-a-vis volume of products, vis-a-vis human capital and all that. And you talked about these smallholder farmers who constitute over 80% of those who are in this agriculture. And he talked about quality, that they were complaining about the quality of the products that were taken out. Some of these things are just not sun drying. Some of them are also lack of knowledge, of the use of pesticides and insecticides. You see, what the ministry sometimes does is that they certify a product and then nobody now follows up because you have these data funds to be able to do proper oversight and extension services. Now, but come back to the good news. You see, there is truly nothing that we're bringing in from outside this country that between fuel and raw materials that they haven't produced. Remember that Nigeria used to have an agriculture, a tractor retrofitting equipment. I think it was in Bauchi somewhere. Even the SPV plant is there. All those are dead. Today we're getting in all manners of equipment coming in water pumps from China that won't work after 2 days and all that. So for me, I think that we should focus more now on, like I said, the programs and actions, my sister. That way, I'll tell you what's going to be happening there. First, let us interrogate what we are spending, bringing in this support for these farmers, and what we are getting back. That's one. That's very critical. Two, how has this helped production? How has it now been able to ascertain that we can now have what we call food security? That is also important. Three, what and what? How does this link to our steel industry? Okay? What do you need to be able to make a thresher? Steel. What do you need to be able to make a tractor? Steel. So what is the role of your steel sector in this? I won't take a lot of our time. Sokoto, there's a plant they used to call the fertilizer phosphate plant in Kaduna. Okay? It used to be one of the biggest industries in Kaduna. What was it running on? On faultless fertilizers. And you have half of Sokoto, rural area of Sokoto, awash with these things. How have we been able? You see, because each time you talk about ministry, and on a last note, there's a research center they call NAPRI. My resource center, we're trying to do a collaboration with them. I was shocked, sisters, Nigerians, when I got in there And these grasses we are trying to bring in from Brazil, they had over a 30-year period improved on it in Nigeria, and it is ready to be commercialized. So it is important that we look inwards if we are going to make these things work. If we give all this work to the Ministry of Agriculture, it won't be fair to them because we'll be putting them under a lot of unnecessary pressure. And I believe, and I so do, that the law that establishes the Ministry of Agriculture makes it an oversight agency. And in becoming an oversight agency, it is for you to now develop partnerships at the lower level that can now allow you to do what it is you're supposed to do as an oversight agency, as a science agency, okay, as a science ministry. But this way we're now talking about plantation, it's going to be them, talking about poultry, it's going to be them, talking about ranching, it's going to be them. We're going to run into a lot of problems, trust me.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Emeka Okengwu. Let's go to, no, we're going to Lagos now. Let's go to Lagos first. Let's go to Lagos first. Well, Mr. Ijewere, you are into, from what I learned, you are into hibiscus. That's what he was talking about now, the zobo plant who's, okay, you're hibiscus. Okay, hibiscus flowers, okay. And what areas, and he was talking about the fact that right now it's something that we're exporting in its raw form, even though we don't know, you know, what it's being, you know, how it's being imported back into the country. But from your perspective, what can we do to improve our products that we are producing here, agricultural products, knowing the fact that some of them are being rejected outside of the country, some of them are being sent back. What can we do to improve our local products in such a way that we can export them?
I think Dr. Emeka really analyzed what was involved. First, there's knowledge gap. The people who are involved in this don't know the consequence of what it is that they are doing. Exporting things that don't meet the international standard creates a negative impact on further exports from Nigeria, and the perception that is developed there goes a very, very long way and for many years destroying this country. The second part is government has a lot more to do in those various areas. You gave an example of the hibiscus flower, which is the zobo. If there can be a rule as to the fact that you cannot export unless it is certified, because the interests of Nigeria as a nation should be held by the government and protected by the government over the personal interest of a person who wants to make quick money. Those are issues that you cannot stop anybody from exporting if he knows he can make money and nobody can stop him. Once you have a law or you have a process that makes sure that nothing goes out of this country that is going to tarnish the image of Nigeria, that is important. And another issue is many of the government departments are working in silos. Everybody is working in his own area. And the visit that was made to Vietnam, the example that was given, to go to Vietnam, what did they go to Vietnam for? What were the discussions that were held? Was the Ministry of Technology involved in that visit? Were the various areas of government involved? No, it was the Ministry of Agriculture. Yes, we know that was Ministry of Agriculture's primary responsibility, but the coordination in government will be such that every part of the government is part of a whole, and Nigeria is a whole, agriculture is a whole. There's no question of compartmentalizing. There has to be better communication. As of today, we have so much we are producing. For me, export is not the first thing we are going for. We are not ready for export. We've not got the ground rules for export. We should, for the time being, suspend exports in some areas and concentrate on improving our quality today. There's so much here. Everybody's talking about the first thing you're going for is export. No. The first thing is to feed the Nigerian market. God has been kind to us, giving us a population of almost 200 million. No country in Africa is as big as that. We've not been able to feed it. Let us try to feed that, and in the process of feeding, we allow us ourselves to improve. Let us stop rushing. Such rushing could break our legs before we start walking. Thank you.
We rushed the export of yams. In your opinion, did we rush export of yams?
The issue is that it was fine, it was good for the press and so on and so forth. But what work has been done? Brazil has been exporting yam for so many years, and all the yams they export go through a particular process. Did we go through it? It was beautiful on pages of newspaper. But as a Nigerian, I was embarrassed when I got the report that came from it. We are a lot more educated, we are a lot more resourceful than we are being presented internationally in the kind of food we export. We're not ready for it, and nothing has been done to ensure that this can be sustainable.
Talking about being a sustainability, the ban on importation of rice this year, are we ready for that?
Oppose any banning of any kind. Nigeria Agribusiness Group has said that very, very clearly. The reason is that the moment you ban, corruption takes over. Our borders are extremely porous. It becomes a situation where it becomes very exciting for you to smuggle. And it's the officers who are supposed to protect Nigeria that are involved in this whole smuggling process. So don't ban anything. Create a situation, let them pay the duty, but let there be competition in terms of quality, in terms of price of goods produced in Nigeria. We are capable of meeting any of these. We should not bring ourselves down. Nigerians are very hard-working people, and they are focused people. Give them the chance to compete with the rest of the world. We always win when we compete with the rest of the world. Do not ban anything, because you only make money for a few people.
Thank you very much, Mr. Emmanuel Ejewere. Let's get back to Feishai of Fatodu. You listened to some of the programs Mr. Kwadli Lekon said the ministry will be rolling out in the coming year. Would any of that be of advantage to you?
I don't think so, to
Why?
be honest. From a personal standpoint, I've decided to do things on my own and not wait for the government or the, other authorities to help me, which I think other young people my age are thinking as well. I mean, I feel like there's a lot we can do on our own as well. We can't always rely on the government and the agricultural ministry to help us, and I think a lot of young people going into farming right now realize that, and there's so much to be done. There's so much to be done.
Sorry, go ahead, Rhoda. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay, you're not you have not found the Anchor Borrowers program, suitable for you. You're not going into that because it's also for smallholder farmers and.
Well, right now I'm keen into the Bank of Industry scheme, but that as well for smallholder farmers, you require some sort of collateral. If you're a smallholder farmer, what kind of collateral do you have? The chances are most times you're renting a piece of land. So what do you put down as collateral? I mean,
that's a problem. All right, thank you, Feisayo. We have tweets, and I'm sure you've been reading some of them on the screen, but let's quickly take a few of those we have here. Henrietta Alom tweets, NTA, we are truly turning to agriculture, but our focus should be on true farmers, not political farmers, with specific focus on storage to indeed feed Nigerians.
Mike and Yoku tweets, agriculture is key in our socio-economic development. Government should sustain growth in rice productions and also pursue development in other agricultural products. The sector has potentials in reducing unemployment, increase in food security and other backward and forward effect.
And Ruben Nagbiri tweets, government should build more roads, especially in rural areas where more of these agricultural produce are lying waste due to bad roads. That was my observation as an ex-core member in Imo State.
Mahmoud Haman tweets, the agric outlook for 2018 cannot be right unless the government recognizes it in its budgetary and policy terms that the industry has two legs, crop production and pastoralism.
Dele Jack Solomon tweets, a robust agricultural development in Nigeria will translate into food security for our people. Improved food availability requires sustainable productive farming systems, well-managed natural resources, and policies to enhance productivity. This the government must ensure happens this year.
Sunny Michael Umakodu tweets again. He said, if there must be a headway in agricultural revolution in 2018, government must give incentives to the real farmers, not the political farmers who have infiltrated the system to the extent that grants are now seen as political compensation for their political patronage. Those are the tweets that we have right now. You can continue to be a part of the conversation. Continue to tweet at us at NTA GMN.
Right. Let's quickly bring in Mr. Lekon Kadri. Earlier on, Dr. Okengwu talked about the need for, packaging and marketing, if we're talking about exports. And with regards to marketing, we've seen that, some crops, have suffered quite a lot because they do not have the market, for the produce. Wheat, for instance, we know the story behind wheat, where the millers have refused to offtake from farmers and all that. So, what are you, doing? What kind of value are you adding to that? But we'll let you respond to this question shortly after this break.
The time has come for Nigeria to take her rightful place in world sports with the first national grassroots sports festival to discover and prepare sport talent and develop future world champions for Nigeria. The festival date is 3rd to 10th March 2018. Venue is the National Stadium, Abuja, packages A and B. This is the opportunity for you to promote your brand through the festival. For broadcast sponsorship, which include live broadcasts, highlight shows, and TV fans show, contact the Chairman, Chief Coordinator, Angelo Peter I. Elosia, or Nick Onyishi. Organizers, Grassroots International Sports Academy and LOP Worldwide Television. Endorsed by the Federal Ministry of Youth and Sports Development. Broadcast partner, NTA.
Hear the call of change. Stand up, Nigeria. Change is here and it's going to stay. Change begins with you. Oh yeah, make we go. Go to so let the change begin from within. Look at you, oh Gerula. Change begins with you and me. Change begins with me. Change begins with me. Change begins with me.
All right, welcome back. Mr. Kadri Lekon, briefly, because we're running out of time, we'd also like Mr. Emmanuel Ijewere to respond to the issue of marketing and packaging. But let's start with Mr. Lekon. Briefly, please.
Thank you very much. I said earlier on that United Nations has decided to ban all agricultural commodities packaged in non-biodegradable materials. And that from this 2018 now, that is why the Ministry of Agriculture is actually promoting the production of kernaf across the 36 states of the Federation, because it is actually adaptable to our environment. This is what we were using in the olden days. And now they have decided to go back to it. And Bangladesh and India, they are the highest producer of this particular commodity. And so you discover that without it, you cannot actually export cocoa again. You can't export cocoa, you can't export cashew. Because if you use polypropylene bags, they spoil so quickly. And the crop, this is the seed that you grew before you come to this. So it is a value chain that has the capacity to employ millions of Nigerians. And it thrives well in virtually every area in Nigeria.
Can we see those seeds? Is it possible?
Yeah, it's possible. It's possible. It's possible. Without it now, you cannot export cashew, you cannot export cocoa, you cannot export ginger and all the rest of them.
Put it on the yes.
Okay. So United Nations has banned the use of polypropylene bag that we are used to. Do you know that even in Tesco now in the UK, if you want to buy any product now, before they use non-biodegradable materials for you, but now they use biodegradable materials. So this is what you have. And like I said earlier on, that even the inner core also can be used in the cleaning of Ogoni land. So these are some of the things that can be used for, that you can use these packaging materials. And also, let me also inform us that in 2017, the Ministry of Agriculture held what do you call it, a sensitization program in conjunction with NAFDAC, with SON, with Ministry of Science and Technology, all across the 6 geopolitical zone, educating farmers, educating investors on ensuring that they comply with international standard, even in the export of their product. The same thing with our agricultural quarantine service. They were all involved, just to ensure that whoever that wants to make money from export of produce, which is a big business these days, then you must comply with international standard. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Likan Kadri. Mr. Jewere, what do you have to say?
First reaction to this is the same old story. Government has a capability of obtaining a lot of information, either through scientific research or going to conferences and interacting with other governments of the world. But many of these things end up in the filing cabinets of the ministries. Governments have so much information, but they are not doers. Private sector people are the doers. They are the ones that invest. They are the ones that take risks. This kind of thing that you've heard about just now, about the degradable materials for packaging agricultural produce, it should be something that the government should work out in a manner to work with the private sector, who are eventually going to be the one that will invest in this, will plant these, and get them processed, buy the machinery to be able to do it, and government will say, to ensure that Nigeria is not left behind by the rest of the world, this is how we shall support you. For everything you are putting in, this is our own risk, because whatever you are doing is in the long-term interest of Nigeria. This is not being done. Say you went for conferences and you came back for this, and you are advising farmers, you are advising people. What kind of advice? You advise without money, it's no advice. Because we in the private sector, we already know what to do. We already want to get this information and use our position to be able to make money. Every farmer, even a small farmer in the village, is a capitalist. He wants to make money to feed his family. It's not a question of hearing good stories and what the United Nations has said. They want to see how does it convert into how I'm able to pay my children's school fees and so on. So whatever policies are coming, government must see the private sector as collaborators, as the same team for Nigeria to progress. Agriculture requires both government and the private sector to work together. But as of today, we're not working together as we expect to work. Government has a lot of information that the private sector does not have access to, and government does not come up with proposals on how to help the private sector achieve its goals, either in terms of funding, in terms of technical support, in terms of subsidy. They don't do any of these. Every one of us has to take all the risk, and when it comes to become, like they say, is the private sector person who has taken the risk that bears all the brunt. I think there should be a resolution in 2018. Government, you are not should be in front. You are to be supporters of the private sector. Supporters, not for you to be in front of the private sector to follow you. No. Other developed countries put their private sector and hardworking farmers and agricultural people in front, and government supports them wherever they go. Those conferences, it should be those who are doers in Nigeria that should be going for those conferences, supported by government.
Thank you very much, Mr. Emmanuel Ijewere. Let's take the tweets that we're getting right now. We've got more tweets. The first one is from Adisa Abiose. He says, first, let cows be fined. Give loans to small-scale farmers because they are the majority. Increase tariff on imported food items and enact laws that will boost local production.
And Habila Kwara Zakshi tweets, federal government has done well in the agricultural sector, but much needs to be done. Loans and other facilities should be available for farmers.
Habila Kwara Zakshi's tweet says, agreed, farming is the way out. There was a bumper harvest all over, but government needs to invest more in agricultural sector.
And Cecilia Okoroma tweets, the world is fast moving, therefore farming is about creativity. Investors in agriculture must consult experts like the likes of Dr. Okongu.
And Dele Jackson Solomon tweets, for the government to achieve sustainable agricultural productivity in 2018, it must face problems associated with poor financing, inaccessible loans, grant and subsidies to real farmers, drought, flooding, lack of basic amenities, land tenure system, and poor transportation.
And this is coming from Chief Akuweze Akaduronye. A very impressive state of development in agriculture today, he says. But like Dr. Emeka Okongwu implied, Nigeria has to pursue agriculture with scientific research.
Judum Ali tweets, state governors should provide enough lands for agriculture and make them accessible online.
And finally, from tweets, Uncle B tweets, what about the option of government owning and running large farms across the country, instead of depending on smallholder farmers? Thank you, everyone, for your tweets. As always, we would like you to keep them coming and give us your suggestions and, of course, your inputs. Dr. Kongo, just your last final word and a quick one. We've talked about other sectors. What do you hope to see in 2018?
Well, let me look at the dairy sector, because, I mean, we didn't talk about it. And I'll give you a story with Brazil.
Very briefly.
Yes, please. Brazil had a population of 179 million people and invested one car against each of those people by building what you call cattle integrators. And Brazil became the largest producers of cheese and every other thing that was coming out of cattle. We cannot do ranching in Nigeria because 80% of the cattle that is in Nigeria are not owned by one person, are not even owned by Nigerians. Nigeria is a cattle route. If we start an integrator system where a government like Benue State puts in 10 billion, and what is that 10 billion? Every cattle that can be bought by. It's only when you own that you ranch. If that is the way to go, that will be my last word. For yams, let us not look at yam as food. Let us look at yam as pharmaceutical grade starch. That way, we'll be making more foreign inputs. So it's all about the back end and the front end working together.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Emmanuel Ijewere, your final words. What would you like to see in 2018? Very briefly, we're winding down.
In 2018, I want more collaboration between government and the farmers and those in the agricultural value chain. I want to see a situation where whatever government policies are discussed with the private sector first, so that they can input into it and increase the quality of government policies. We also have to face 2018 with a brave face from government. Government needs to say to itself, we have the courage to invest in agriculture in terms of subsidy, like what is doing in other countries. The rice and so on that are coming in are heavily subsidized by those countries. Nigeria needs to compete, and then Nigeria must have the courage to say, we too will subsidize to be able to fight them back. These are the situations, and finally, the terms of funding of agriculture the Nigerian Bank of Agriculture should now be completely revamped and made a source, because our commercial banks are not designed for funding agriculture, and they cannot be. So the Bank of Agriculture needs to be courageously, completely revamped with all that it takes.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Emmanuel Ijewere, a renowned chartered accountant and chairman, Best Foods Global Limited, and of course involved in crop productions. Thank you very, very much for your thoughts and time on Good Morning Nigeria today.
Thank you very much.
All right, it's on that note, we want to also say a very big thank you to Quadri Lekong. He's the director, Plantation Program, Federal Ministry of Agric. Thank you for joining us on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much.
And also a very big thank you to Feishayo Fatodu, a young farmer. Thank you for coming on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much for having me.
And keep doing what you're doing. Finally, thank you to Mr. Emeka Okengwu, Dr. Emeka Okengwu. spare me that. As an agric economist, thank you very much.
I'm actually a development economist.
A development economist. All right, thank you very much for joining us on Good Morning Nigeria. Sports is up next. And that's our package on Good Morning Nigeria. Today, we'll be back again, same time. That's 7 a.m. tomorrow morning. I'm Rhoda Anonam. Thank you for being there.
All right, and that's our program for today. I joined Rhoda Anonam to say thank you, and hope you'll join us again tomorrow at the same time on the same station. But we do have a repeat broadcast of today's edition later today at 5 minutes past 5 at channel 101 on Star Times on NT News 24. We hope you watch it. Bye for now.